time to introduce our speaker today. Reverend Patty Vail. Patty hails from landlocked Wichita, Kansas. She joined the Navy the day after college graduation and spent the next 10 years of the Cold War in accounting and analysis on 2 ships in San Francisco and San Diego, with 3 years spent in Guam. During her spare time, she married Bob Vail and had 3 children, Reverend Dr. Natalie, Army Major Elise, and soon-to-be Dr. Clay. In 1994, she completed an RN degree, and a few years later, she became a nurse case manager. Patty came to spiritualism after experiencing a haunting in Guam. She had horrible nightmares of a young U.S. Marine dying in the spot where their house was built on in World War II battlefield. She woke Bob and told him about her dream and what it meant that the young man was stuck on the earth plane not knowing he had passed. The dream stopped. She began talking to him and helped him find his parents who had been waiting for him since 1943. After such dramatic contact with the other side, she began studying, first as a healing touch practitioner. When Harmony Grove began their institute, she and Bob were in the class of ordained ministers certified in healing and mediumship. Since then, Patty began serving in San Diego spiritualist churches, conducting worship and healing services in circles. She served on church boards for 2 terms and taught at HGSA's Institute. She began accredited mediumship education circles in her home. She prefers mental mediumship, not trance. She specializes in past life readings. Let's give a warm welcome to Patty Vail.
Thank you, and good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Today I wanted to talk about, I was going to start with a vibrational meditation called the Golden Egg, which is a chakra meditation. But we have already talked about chakras today, and so I'm just going to go on and to save time, and I'll go ahead and talk about this. Now, all of us learned about, I think, Maslow's hierarchy of needs in school, right? Okay. Well, you know, it always bothered me that the top of the pyramid, right, was self-actualization. And I don't know where you went to school, but I went to Catholic school. So we were told we would never achieve this, never. It was not going to happen, so don't even think about it. And so it always bothered me because I said, why can't you be self-actualized? What is this thing that holds you back from doing this? Why, you know, is only Einstein or, you know, somebody like that actualized, but none of the rest of us can do it? Well, I didn't really believe that. And I didn't believe a lot of the things that I was taught. And so there's a lot of growth that we have to have in lifetime between what we were taught and we learned and we thought we knew, and what we actually listened to ourselves and to spirit, and now we know. That's a totally different kind of wisdom, isn't it? Well, religions are there, and I'm talking about established religions like, you know, that are very, very form-driven. They're there because they needed to control people, and they made a lot of rules up, and they kind of implied that these rules came from Jesus, but they didn't. They didn't come from him very much at all. He had 2 commandments: love your neighbor as yourself, and do unto others as you would have done unto you. And I think that's basically the tenets that we adhere to in spiritualism, which I would call more of a movement and a philosophy than a religion. So if you look at, if you think about Maslow, but you now give it 7 layers, that's called one order. That's the churches, you know, that's how most of us grew up in churches, which told you this is wrong and this is right and you have to do this and you can't do that. And so I guess it puts a certain order on society. I know mothers teach their children, don't run in the street. No, like that, don't touch the stove. So a certain amount of order is necessary for us to lead our lives, but too much order is impeding us, and that's why we can't get to that self-actualization. The next thing, if we look at that as our root chakra, and moving on up into our sacral chakra, this is where our emotions are, this is where our will is, this is where our ego is, this is what we have an urge to do, that sort of thing. And so we, as toddlers, we really exhibit the will phase. We want to do what we want to do when we want to do it. And as we grow older, we find out that other people's needs are sometimes a lot more important than ours. And we get quite a bit older and we realize that most people's needs are a lot more than ours. And I think that this is the beginning of self-actualization, is knowing who you are and what you care about. So the next area is wisdom, and I talked about that already, between knowing something because you were taught and knowing something because you know it. You feel it in your heart. And the next one is earnestness, and I think this is the throat chakra, and really what you're doing here is you're going out and you're speaking your truth and you're living your truth, because this is our self-expression. And most of it we do by talking. So that's very important, because now we are starting to live by our own precepts, what we know to be true. And then there's patience, because it's hard when you talk to children and you talk to adults and you talk to people that are really down on their luck, and you try to help and they don't listen sometimes. I mean, they're not going to listen. Sometimes you are a savior to them, but sometimes they're not ready or they don't want to. And so we have to have patience with our fellow man, because the next thing we have to do is love our fellow man. And sometimes that's really hard. I mean, there are people that I try to love, although I could never like them. I'm sure you can all think of one person at least in this country. But I try to put some love in there and hope that maybe they'll come to their senses, but I can't force anything about anybody else. So after that is mercy, and mercy is just really living your life in love with the world, in love with everyone in the world. And we are all part of God, and God is love. And that energy has to be shared, and that is what our role is here. So be aware that God sits in the silence. When we put all these crazy things in our lives, well, some of them we have to put in our lives, like the 9 to 5 or the 3 to 11 shift. But when we busy ourselves to the point where we can't even figure out whether we're coming or we're going, this is not helpful to our advancement. And if we don't advance, we aren't able to help other people to advance, or just to live, if that's where they are. So when we move out of that ego thing, which is like, how could you have done that to me, into how can I love you? That's real growth. And we start to see that even in small children, where, if mommy's feeling really bad in the morning, the children may come and pat her back and say, feel better, mommy. If it's daddy, probably yells a whole bunch of things, and they probably stay away. But So we have to endure difficulties in life. I mean, I don't suppose that there's anybody that doesn't endure difficulties, even if their difficulties would seem like paradise to most of us. they are difficulties to them. So one of the things we have to keep in mind is that we are going to be moving forward. We want to be moving upward. We want to be moving onward. We want to be moving with the energy. That's what energy does. It moves. And when the energy gets really slowed down, it's like this altar. It doesn't move. It doesn't speak anymore. It doesn't. It's no longer a tree. And so it's kind of not that it still doesn't have some energy in it, because if it didn't, there wouldn't be anything there. But this is something that we need to understand. And as we're moving forward, one of the things that I thought about when I was writing this is that growing up in a very structured church and in very structured religious education, they stressed a lot about tradition. And when I got into the Navy, oh my God, first thing they tell us is, tradition is everything, you know. And you know what tradition does? Tradition, it holds you in the past. It keeps you looking backward to the ones who came before. And we find this very interesting. I find archaeology and anthropology to be very, very interesting. But it's not going to help me go forward. It's just like my mind likes to look at it, you know. But there's a difference between what we know, even the things that we are enlightened about, things that came in through the third eye, things that we incorporated into our being. That's different from the overarching issue about why we're here, and that is love and mercy. To have mercy on those who need it, and to help if we can. We can't always help, but if we can, we should try. I think that's it can be very exhausting, and sometimes you get burned out trying, but it is just necessary. So we are moving into a new earth, and I don't know if any of you have been watching a whole bunch of podcasts or anything like this about the new earth and the moving from the three-dimensional life into the 4 and the 5. But this is what most of the channelers are saying, and they're channeling ETs, and they're channeling angels, and they're channeling saints, and it's very interesting what they tell you, because they just cut right to the chase. They don't have to go with all this stuff that we had to kind of extinguish, because it was what we were programmed to come in as. And you know, this is to be able to participate in this new earth. We have to become new souls. We need to move forward. We need to let go of those traditions, let go of those things that held us back, let go of, you know, don't cross the street because those people aren't nice. All those things that we heard growing up that no longer serve us. We have to let go of these things. We have to move on. We have to realize that in everybody there is something. There's something that is good, even though it seems like it's been extinguished by whatever their life path has been. There is something that's worth redeeming. And the reason that is that we're all part of God. And so I don't know about you, but I don't think it's not quite in my vocabulary to say, you know, you're part of God, but I don't like that part of God. So, you know, it's hard sometimes, but we have to move forward. And there's a difference. This is, about international relations, because we've got a lot of problems in our domestic relations right now. But in international relations too, we have to know that the plan for the earth, the plan forward for the earth, is not going to come from our United Nations. I mean, they're kind of not doing that right now. But it's going to come from our own mindfulness and our own knowing and becoming the better you, the better me, the better all of us. As we do that, we have moved into self-actualization. We know ourselves, we know what we're capable of, we know what we want to be, and we're moving toward that all the time. And as we do that, I think we are self-actualized. I think that that is why we're here, is to become self-actualized. And if you don't get it right the first time, you can always come back. So, and some people come back a lot, and some people come back and do very, very strange experiences, but I guess they had a reason for it. But everything should come from the heart. If it only comes from the brain, we're not engaging our soul. We're just engaging the intellect. And there's universal intelligence. It's out there, You can tap into it any time. We've all got angels and teachers and guides and, maybe even have an ET that remembers us from another life. And we can talk to them. We can call them in and ask them for help. They're not with us all the time, but they'll come if you ask them, and they'll be right away to help you. And so we don't have to know everything in our mind to figure out what is right, what is good, what is holy, what is blessed. When we look around and we see people treating other people very, very badly and taking mothers and children off of the streets and fathers away from their families and shipping them somewhere horrible, when we see that, we don't have to understand why they're doing that. We have to feel this is wrong. This is not love. This is the opposite of love. And we need to understand that. And I don't want to make a political tirade here, but I just think that we all need to look at our individual lives and know that I truly believe this. It's more important to help one person in your lifetime than it is to say, oh, one person's nothing. I'm not going to bother to do that. One person's everything, because that person is part of God just as you are. And so if we want to be godly, and if we want to be self-actualized, and if we want to know who we really, really are, we must do the work. And fortunately, spiritualism gives us a lot of classes and things like that, and meditation and opportunities to learn to work. And also in healing, we learn to use energy and move energy. And this is something that is in everybody, but most people don't know it and wouldn't believe it if you told them. But it's so necessary to keep working on yourself. We can't just be complacent. We can't be complacent to the things that go on around us and just say, oh well, it's not my business. I'm not here illegally. My family came over in 1604. I could care less. I mean, they were illegal. The British kept keeping them out of Canada, and they kept ending up going back up to Canada. So I just don't understand why we have a world that there's plenty of room, there's plenty of food, there's plenty of everything for everyone who needs to be here, who wants to be here on earth. And it's a voluntary thing. If you don't want to work, go somewhere else. There's planets that have really, really strict rules, and you don't get to make any decisions, and there's no free will. And, if that's the kind of life you want to lead, just fantasies, and no drive in yourself to make yourself the best you can be. And I don't mean the best lawyer you can be, or the best cook you can be, or the best whatever profession, but the best person, the best essence of God. This is what we're working toward. And so I invite you to look inside and see how you might want to move forward a little bit and come off of your safety spot and say, I can do this, I can do this. And if I do this, maybe that person will do it. And maybe that person will see this person and they'll do it too. And pretty soon we've got a whole community of people that are working together for the better good. Because we're all trying to ascend. We're all trying to return to the source. And with that, I'll leave you.